The conservation stories from Florence illustrate that rewilding is to some extent possible, but it ain't easy. The talk also reminded me to underline that tropical forests and virgin forests or old growth forests are better to be considered non-renewable in human relevant timescales. That said, let me focus my last 15 minutes or so on plastic pollution and interactions. To give an example of such interactions directly, plastics are not only harmful due to a direct effect on biodiversity, but they may also exacerbate problems of invasive alien species. As Pisek et al. Point out that emerging pathways are creating new categories of invasions, such as plastics providing rafts for transport of organisms across oceans. I took a closer look at plastic pollution in a field experiment that I set up, where my idea was to test the broken window hypothesis using beach cleanups. When applied to litter, the idea is that one is more likely to litter on a littered street or than on a clean street. There are various possible underlying mechanisms for why this may be the case. See Durr and Vollard for a nice overview and evidence in line with the hypothesis. Note that much evidence is in line with this hypothesis, except for natural areas where the tendency to clean up after others has been observed to dominate. I thought it would be interesting to test for this broken window hypothesis on the beach, where over a period of 7 weeks I visited this beach and one other 4 times per week to either clean up or only count, all according to a randomized schedule. I marked the corner of each field by a cairn or steenmannetje in Dutch. For each field, I counted all items of litter that were larger than a nurdle and kept records for 12 different categories of litter that I identified as most common in the first week. The randomized cleaning schedule determined whether I'd clean the field once or twice per week for the second week onward, and the last 2 weeks I only counted to see whether there would be spillover effects. Seemed like a pretty good setup for an experiment, right? Wrong. My experiment had the fatal flaw of likely spillovers between treatment and control, meaning that even though I found the opposite of the broken window hypothesis, my experiment did not falsify this hypothesis. Because it could be that the clean parts of beach simply attracted more visitors, and that the tendency to litter could still have been higher on littered beaches. Well, my experiment did not help to get more insights into the broken window hypothesis. My findings with respect to marine litter were insightful. The number of styrofoam type of disposables in full or more often in parts, unidentifiable small plastics, and parts of plastic fishing nets I found most concerning. Why we continue to allow our fisheries to use plastic nets is beyond me. And similarly, why do we allow companies to produce and profit from products that much of the public does not know how to use responsibly or dispose of? This map depicts the intensity of mismanaged plastics in kilograms per year. I included this map to mention Ocean Cleanup, a company that aims to clean plastic from our oceans. You can find a similar map based on Jambeck et al. By Our World in Data. The difference is that this map depicts plastic generation, irrespective of how it is disposed of. Our continued use of plastic is not for the lack of alternatives. There are plenty of plastic alternatives, from avocado seeds to fungi, yet as long as people can profit from producing plastics and are allowed to do so, some will. We need to move beyond the tokenism of plastic bag bans by both enlarging the scope of the plastic bans for consumer disposables in general and for applications for which plastic can still be argued to be worth using, we should still tax the production of plastic heavily to speed up the adoption of alternatives. Let us watch two clips on such alternatives to plastic.